Hi everyone, this is Anne. Welcome to the Woolly Wonka Fibers podcast. Today is February, it's Monday, February 3rd, no, 5th, I'm 2 days behind, 5th, 2018. I hope you all are doing well. If you are a new subscriber or new watcher, thank you for taking a little bit of time to check me out. If you're a returning viewer, thank you again for hanging out with me here as I talk about my knitting and spinning and book reading things and indie dye and design business. I'm a little bit scattered today, even though I made myself a whole index card of notes. I'm in the last final throes of getting the dyeing done and into boxes ready to go to Stitches West. My deadline for UPS to grab those from me in order to make the track and be in the advanced warehouse in time is a week from tomorrow. So I have a lot of boxes scattered all throughout in my staging area, which is next to my studio. Yeah, it looks like a bomb has gone off, and I kind of feel that way with a lot of other things too, but gonna try to stay focused here and let y'all know what's going on. So as I said, Stitches West, that is coming up the weekend of, I think it's the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th of February, so about 2.5 weeks away. That is in Santa Clara, California. It's one of their bigger shows. I think they have about 200 vendors, so it's yeah, it's a little bit kind of overwhelming. I will be in booth 120 again this year, which I think I've mentioned. And you guys get a chance with this particular podcast to get a sneak peek on some things that I will be bringing with me to the show. So let's start off with some knitting. Oh, I guess I should mention, because I haven't mentioned this in a while, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as Woolly Wonka Fibers. My website is www.woollyWonkaFiber.com. I'm also on Ravelry. Ravelry group is Woolly Wonka Fibers. Any of those places you can find me. Okay, first off, a finished, let's call it 99.9% finished knitting project. That is a personal project. And that is the Lilin Steel hat. I knit this from 2 colors of tail and tendril. Their base is called Maple. It's the same as my Rhiannon sock. It's a 75% superwash wool, 25% nylon base. It was a color set, so there was 50 grams of each of the colors, called Dawn on the Mountain, and it's from her Lord of the Rings set. So I think this hat turned out super cute. It's not overly slouchy, just a little bit. Now the thing that I'm missing is the pom-pom. And I have not gotten that far, but it is going to be done in the pink when I get that to that point. So yeah, I think that turned out really pretty darn cute. So it's now been crazy hot here. Like it was 60 degrees this weekend, and it's the 1st of February, and everything is dry. We have not had measurable rainfall at my house in over 4 months. So we are going to be in bad trouble when the winds pick up, and it's not like I need a wool hat to go outside, but hey, it's finished. It's super cute. I love it. Got that completed. And I love the pink and gray colorway. So that kind of bridges the gap for me from January's gray prompt in the Woolly Wonka Palooza to February's pink prompt in the Woolly Wonka Palooza. And there will probably be another pink. I've got an itchy nose today, sorry. Allergies already. I've got another pink project, I think, slated for the month of February. We'll see if I can get it done. If you are participating in the Wonka Palooza, and if you aren't, you should, because it's a ton of fun, our 2 prompts are either a cowl or something pink, something with pink. It doesn't have to be 100% pink, but pink as an identifiable color within your project. All the specs are in the Wonka Palooza threads over in the Ravelry Woolly Wonka Palooza group thread. Come join us. All good. So let's talk about some finished things. I will just sidebar and say I currently have a vest project on the needles. That's a design project for the spring-ish, first quarter maybe, Filament Magazine. Kathleen and I have decided we're going to move to a slightly more fluid publishing schedule because she's super busy and I'm super busy, and rather than, sorry, that was kind of bugging me. Rather than try to sort of force ourselves to just stick with that quarterly production schedule, we've decided that we're going to pretty much publish as we get stuff done in small themed groups. So it'll still be 8 patterns, but it won't necessarily come out exactly every single quarter. So that said, that's kind of what I'm working on in the evenings as my focus project right now. Let's move on to some stitches things. I do not have it to show you, but I will be releasing a new sweater pattern next week. It is knit with Greenwood Fiberworks Yakety Yak sock yarn base. It's a design that I did. Carolyn, who owns Greenwood Fiberworks, asked me to do a stitches pattern for her, which I was delighted to do because she's awesome. And she sent me a gorgeous yak silk merino base yarn to work with. And I worked up a lace type cardigan for her. So that will be releasing next week. I no longer have the cardigan to show you because it had to go off to live with her. So she can take it to Stitches. It will be in her booth. The pattern will be available on Ravelry. Look for that about 10 days. The other things that I do have the samples to show you. This will be featured in the Yarn Guys booth. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that I've been doing a kit for them that's quarterly, and it's based on the Ogham alphabet, which is like the ruins, the Viking ruins alphabet. And so each of those letters in that alphabet is associated with a tree. This month I have done the Hazel Tree. This is knit with 1 skein of my Nimue sock. The colorway is Thorn Apple, and it is this piece. It is a nice sized piece, even though it is only one skein. It has that big wide lace panel on the back. It has the little clusters of hazelnuts and kind of the drooping branches of the hazelnut tree. Kind of a bright spring green color. It's knit from the top down, size 7 US 7 needles. And side panels are stockinette. Center back panel is the lace panel. So they will have kits available in their booth. I can't remember the exact number, but it's only 1 row over from mine. So if you're in the row that's the hundreds, so it's probably like 220, 218, 219, 220. They have 3 booths. So they will have kits for that in their booth, and it is also available in their shop. This pattern will be releasing next week. If you can pick up a copy from Ravelry, or if you're attending Stitches, you can also pick up a copy from them plus the yarn. Okay, next I have 2 shawls that are kind of kissing cousins. Let's call them that. I wanted to do a shawl that was interesting, that you could use either 3 colors or 5 colors, because I know a lot of people either have gradient packs or you could use scrap yarn for this as well if you had about 210 yards of 5 colors. I wanted to do one that would work with either 3 colors or 5 colors. I wanted it to be basic enough that most starting knitters could still handle it, but it would be interesting enough that intermediate and better skill set knitters wouldn't be bored to death. This is a hard pattern to come up with. It sounds like it would be straightforward, but it's kind of not. So the two patterns that are releasing are both entitled RNG for random number generator. And how this works is the pattern gives you at least 2 options, sometimes 3, for each section of the shawl. You can, again, either knit it with 3 colors or 5 colors. Both of the patterns have those multiple options. So you pick a random number generating thing, whether you want to use the random number generator that you can get online, whether you want to put scraps of paper in a hat, whether you want to have someone you live with call out a number, or gaming dice, or just knit it as the mood strikes you. Gives you lots of different options. So you can buy this one pattern and have this same shawl knit, but it's going to look different every time, but depending on what type of colors you use, depending on how the options fall together. I did include in each of these patterns the exact options that were used to knit the sample. So if you just want to duplicate the shawl, rock on, you can do that. If you want to just have fun with it and see kind of what is mine going to look like when I get to the end, you can do that too. So again, there are 2 patterns, the 3 color and the 5 color. Let me show you the 5 color sample first. These are both shaped exactly the same. So you start at one short end and you work your way through, making increases happen to get to this long end. This sample was knit with my favorite, unicorn. And then this is unicorn and turquoise. This is now pewter and turquoise. Pewter, azalea and turquoise, black dahlia and azalea, and then it finishes off with unicorn and black dahlia. So to knit this pattern, the skill set you need to have is knit, purl, yarn over increases, basic slip, slip, knit, knit 2 together type decreases, and that's it. That's it. It's all you need to know to knit this pattern. So I will have this pattern going up live on Ravelry this week, actually, so you can pick yourself up a copy if you want. But it will also be available at Stitches West. I will have yarn packs, including this one. The name of this one is Amy's Choice. That are already kind of take the guesswork out of it. You can just grab one and go. And if you pick up the yarn pack, I should say this is knit in my Aarten sock, slow down, which is the Superwash Merino Cashmere Nylon Blend. I love it for shawls, but it's great for socks too. It gives you 5 of the half skeins. So you need 200, like I said, about 210, 215 yards of each of the 5 colors. Let's see if I can stand back and give you guys. And again, for each of these sections, you have at least 1 and sometimes 2 different options on how to, on what to knit. So the combinations are going to be different for everybody's shawl, basically. I will have other yarn packs with other 5 colorways in not only in my shop when I'm back from Stitches West, but I will also have them at Stitches West. If you pick up the yarn pack at Stitches West, you get a coupon code that will get you the shawl pattern free. If you want, you can just buy the pattern separately. It's also on Ravelry. So now on to the 3-color shawl. These I won't have kitted up specifically, but I will have the yarn base with me at Stitches West. So you can mix and match and pick your own, but you know, keep in mind that this is the same basic process in the sense that instead of using 5, you're using 3 colors, but you still get to pick from different options for each of the sections of the shawl. The sample knit with the same sock yarn base is knit in Splash. This is Splash and Turquoise, and this is Turquoise and Sky Gazer. So here is the 3-color version. So for instance, you can see on this one, let me show you. So on this 5-color one, the bottom option or the second to last section, the option chosen was to do the eyelets with the stripes in between. Just stockinette stitch. And on this one, the option is a slip stitch pattern with a stockinette base. So 2 very different looks, and very different because the colors are different. So different. So that will also release next week. Like I said, I will not have specific kits for this made up, but again, if you purchase the 3 skeins of sock yarn you need to knit a version of this, I have coupon codes that will get you the pattern for free as a free download from Ravelry. I will also have individual print patterns, so if you're on a stash busting quest this year, either of those shawls would be great to do that with. You'll have those as options. So those will be, the samples will be in my booth. Those will be at Stitches West with me in a couple of weeks. I think that's it for knitting, guys. And kind of the shop advertisement information, which I sort of had to do because everything I had to show you was something that was Stitches oriented. Having this great new tea today that my tea club in New Mexico sent me. It is spearmint, peppermint, jasmine, and green tea. And I'm drinking it in my Eternia mug by one of my favorite, there's a lot of glare on the screen, one of my favorite artists, Amy Stewart. I love that one. Y'all can guess why. Okay, moving on to spinning. I finished half of the little potion packet, Polworth potion packet rovings from 2 by Hand that I have been spinning. Here is their card. They are sadly no longer dying, but I have oodles of their stuff in stash, so I'm spinning that this year. They did include a little card, which I have somewhere here on my desk. Now cannot find, wait, here it is, that has the 4 colorways on it. I have no idea which of these 2. I don't think either of these is Luna Lovegood, but maybe I'm wrong. One of them might be. It's got pink in it. Anyway, doesn't really matter. They're both pretty. So I have spun these up as, they're each an ounce. I've spun them both up as 2 plies, sock weights. Here's the first one. Love it. Little blue grays, greeny grays. Yeah. My kind of colorway. And the second one. Grays, lilacs, a little bit of pink, some chocolate brown. Kind of reminds me of Spumoni, you know. And so here are these 2 together. Like I said, this isn't technically a gradient pack, but I think you could easily knit a pair of socks where you moved from this colorway into this colorway. And then the next, sorry, I had a notification pop up on my screen while I'm trying to look at what I'm showing you. I think you could easily then add the next one here that has some of those purpley pinks and kind of continue the progression. And that's my plan for these, is to do striped socks or striped mittens or something that I can use them as the equivalent of a gradient set. So these guys are done. I'm working on the other two colorways that are also both each 1 ounce, and hopefully we'll have those to show you next time I record. Moving on. Okay, that is it for like the yarn and fiber crafty stuff. So if that's all you guys are here for, excellent. I'll see you next time. If you're interested in books, get something to drink and then come back. I have a lot because I went to DC last week and I did a lot of reading. I have actually 6 books to talk to you guys about. Maybe I'll do 3 or 4 and save the other 2. We'll see. Anyway, 21 minutes in. All right, let's start with The Bone Witch. We'll see how succinctly I run through these. The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. I love this book. You want something fun to read that has some magic and a kick-ass heroine? Go get it. That's the short version of it. The book opens with the young woman's older brother, having been killed, trying to, while he's in the army, and he's been sent to slay the equivalent of a dragon. He's brought home, and after the funeral, she's very young at this point, I think 5 or 6. She's at his gravesite, and she realizes she doesn't want her brother to be dead. And from deep inside, she summons up this force, and she brings her brother back from the dead. Which is to say, a little bit disconcerting to the rest of the family, as well as her brother. News of this gets out. Kind of one of the local, I guess I would call her a sorceress, shows up at the family's house and says, this child has to come with me to be taught. So she winds up being apprenticed to this house to learn how to become a bone witch, which is the most powerful and sort of least controllable of the witchcraft guilds, I guess we would call them. The other guilds kind of do the elements. There's fire witches and the air witches and so on and so forth. Really great twist on this book is that the main character and the system in which she's being trained is very similar to the old-fashioned geisha-style training, where they learn all sorts of things under the tutelage of sort of a house mother. But mixed into this great story is all of this magic. They allow her to keep her dead brother as her familiar, so he winds up kind of being her bodyguard. The story is told through like page-long snippets that are her in present day talking to this bard about her life, and he's learning things about her little by little. It's kind of the first page of every main chapter. And then the rest of the story unfolds as she goes through this training process and learns how to control her powers. So not only that, the writing in this book, the descriptive writing, the style of writing, it's absolutely lyrical. This author could have written a book on anything and is such a good writer that I think the beauty of her word crafting would still come through. So it's a lovely book for that reason as well. First in a series, which y'all know how I feel about that. This one was like, if I had any complaint about this book, it was that there was a little bit of that cliffhangy, like you have to read book 2 to get it. Not too bad, but enough of it that I feel like I should mention it. Other than that, this is a book I will think about quite a bit. It's something that had a lot of inspiration points for me. It's the type of story I like to read I liked that the heroine is flawed. She's not perfect, but she definitely has redemptive qualities. Um, yeah, this was a good read. The Bone Witch, Rin Chupeco. Next up, a book called Smilla's Sense of Snow by Peter Hoag. These are all, I guess I also should mention, part of my Goodreads 2018 Readers Challenge. Honestly, I can't remember most of the prompts for these. Kind of doesn't matter. If you like them, go get them. If it sounds like something you like, go grab it and read it. This, I think, was for one that was originally not written in English but translated into English. And the author is Danish, I believe. The book is set mostly in Copenhagen. That's where the main kind of impetus for the story takes place. Okay, this was a 3-star read. There's a couple reviews on Goodreads which I basically can say, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. So if you're interested, pop over to Goodreads, read those reviews. They probably will do a more cohesive job of reviewing this book than I will. It's a sort of murder mystery. Okay, first off, the thing that you should know is it's written with a definite Scandinavian sort of gloom and doom, dark atmosphere. I think one of the reviews I read likened it to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and there are a lot of similarities. Our main character is a kind of kick butt sort of person who's flawed. She's very flawed. There is this sort of overall sense of sort of the like long dark winter nights. If you don't like that sort of vibe, this book's probably not for you. Okay, so the things I liked about the book. First off, I had no idea that there were like Inuit Danes. Apparently Greenland and the people who live there, who are sort of like our North American Inuits in the Arctic, there's a similar small ethnic group who are, I guess they consider themselves Greenlanders in terms of their history and culture and ethnicity, and then they are part of a sort of larger Danish conglomeration that are subject to trade treaties and shipping rules. And I found that the information about this ethnic group very interesting. I did not find interesting the page after page about shipping in that area. It's not like, here's an interesting port. It's like, here's a ship that weighs this much and it displaces this much water and it can only go, this far from the coast and it has to sign in at the docks. And that didn't interest me at all. Those were like, flip the page, flip the page. The very beginning of this book and the very end of this book are gripping. The middle of this book drags on and on and on and on. And the ending is unsatisfactory for me. There's no closure at the end of this book. And you really want there to be closure. The overarching premise is there's this young woman, Smilla. She is half Danish, half Greenlander. Her mother was a Greenlander. Her father is this wealthy surgeon doctor. And they've produced this child who's very bright, and she's now in her 30s. She's never really, she's tried all these different things. She's obviously very smart, but she's never stuck with anything. She's a complete flake and basically goes to her father for handouts. She's never really held a job for any length of time. But she has all this knowledge of stuff, and she has knowledge of snow and ice, both from a professional point of view. She's done studies about if you leave a carabiner outside in minus 29-degree weather, does the metal strength hold up after it unfreezes or not? And she's done things with a polar bear expedition. And then as a child growing up with her mother, she learned about all the different types of snow and ice and things. Her mother was an expert hunter, and living where they did, Arctic Circle area, they know a lot about winter. And so this theme crops up throughout this book. So she is at the forefront of the book, and the book opens with the funeral of this little boy who has fallen from the roof of the apartment building she lives in and has died. And she doesn't think it's an accident, so she starts poking into it. 3 out of 5. Had some interesting points, had some stuff where I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm still reading this book, but I'm going to make myself do it. Very uneven and very dark. It's a very, very dark book. Good things basically don't happen to anybody in the book. So if that's not your thing, pass this one on by. Next, The Bear and the Nightingale. Catherine Arden is the author. This is also the beginning of one in a series. Let's go back to the, I really like this book. It's kind of a retelling of probably several Russian fairy tales, but it reminds me the most of East of the Sun, West of the Moon. It is set in Russia. The main character, obviously I like books with strong heroines. That seems to be what I read. But at any rate, the main character is the youngest daughter in a family, and she's very different. The author does a great job tying in kind of the move from the traditional nature-based worship of various gods to a Christianity-based worship. And the serf system. So all that fun history is wrapped up in this fairy tale about this young girl who loses her mother basically when she's born and is kind of always an outsider and always different. It will come as no surprise to you all to learn that part of the reason I love this book so much is she winds up being befriended by the horses that her family owns. And then they feature prominently in the fairy tale portion of the book, where winter is a god and a powerful one at that. I don't want to ruin the story by telling you who the bear and who the nightingale are, but they are both characters in the book that really advance the story. Just beautifully interwoven, I thought, with, like I said, a sort of classic Russian fairy tale feel with actual pieces of history in terms of the czars and things going on in Russia and the agricultural system there, but not in a way that beats you over the head, a way that's integrated into the story. And this young woman who has powers beyond what anybody's prepared to recognize. It's set in the winter. It was like the perfect time to think about cold and ice and snow, even though we have none of those things right now. I'm cheering for cold ice and snow. I would give this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's something I've wanted to read for a while. I had it as a hold at the library. It finally came up, and I snagged it. Loved it. How am I doing on time? 33 minutes. Okay, guys, hang with me. I'm going to talk about 2 more. I realize number 6 on this list is one I'm currently reading, so we'll go on. The Red Garden by Alice Hoffman. I am a fan of Alice Hoffman, so I'm probably going to read anything that comes in front of me. She is the author who wrote Practical Magic. You may be familiar with the movie that had Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock in it several years ago. It's kind of magic wrapped into the everyday. So this one's a little bit of a different take on her sort of contemporary magic in that it spans from the colonial period in America up through the late 90s, not 1990s, so to the 20th century. But it all centers around this small town in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. So it starts with the earliest settlers and comes all the way up to the present day. So each chapter is a different character. And I know she's written another one like this, but I can't remember the name of it. So every chapter is a different character that has a different story to tell, but it all centers around this small town. So it sort of traces one lineage, and I really liked how she did it because she it isn't necessarily like here's the great great grandmother and down to the current day daughter. There's some family tree branches, so there's the great aunt and the magic passes to her niece kind of thing. Sometimes it's in a man, which is not traditional, I guess, a traditional focus. But the first story that starts in the colonial period, uh, the young woman marries this guy, and he convinces two other couples that they're going to go settle this land out in the Berkshires, and he's an explorer and he knows all about that. So once they actually get going out into the wilderness, everybody with them realizes he knows nothing. And this young wife realizes she's left civilization, such as it is now out in the wilderness with the savages and basically is left on her own. The first winter, everyone else holes up in the house and is sort of morose and just kind of waiting to die. And she puts on a pair of boots and she goes out and finds food. She's very like roll up her sleeves and get it done. And winds up saving this group of people. But she has no respect for her husband. And so one of the things she does in the town is she names everything, because she wishes he was dead. She names everything like the dead husband pond and the dead husband meadow and things like that. And so it's kind of fun to see how those things get translated over the years, because eventually it becomes husband's meadow or husband's lake. And they drop the dead off of it and it becomes a little more politically correct and friendly. And then her story ends where I'm not going to give too much of this away, but she buries a bear, like black bear, in this garden space outside her house. So fast forward through the rest of this book, and the town grows up, and this homestead has been rebuilt and overbuilt and sort of is still in the family, but it's kind of now this ramshackle old house. But the garden where she's buried this bear is featured in almost every story, even if it's peripherally in one way or another. And it kind of comes full circle to the last two stories where it's a big feature. And one of the hallmarks of this garden is that the dirt is very, very red, and everything that you plant in the garden, if you plant a white rose, it grows red. If you plant radishes, they're red straight through. So there's this little magical hook in each of the stories. I also really like this book. I know I'm repeating myself, but strong heroines and magic. It's what I like. Okay. In Praise of the Bees by Kristen Gleason. Told y'all I read a lot. Thank you to multiple plane rides and 4-hour layovers in Houston. Gotta love them. In Praise of the Bees. This is a historical fiction. It's set in the Saxon-controlled lands, I think in about 1000 AD. There's a young woman who's found beaten up and half drowned in a pond. And she's taken to a local, one of the few Christian nunneries, I guess we would call it. They're not really calling it a nunnery at this point in the history of Christianity, but that's basically what it is. It's a group of women who have retired from social life to read scripture, ponder God. They're operating as if they were a monastic community, but it's all women. The main abbess character at the nunnery is their beekeeper, and she nurses this young woman back to health. The young woman has some amnesia. She gets little bits and pieces of her life, like they figure out somehow she knew something about music, but they don't know what. She's able to play the harp, but she can't remember how she learned. And so they are trying to figure out who she is. She's trying to remember who she is. She slowly comes back to life with the support and the help of the women who are in this community, to the point that she thinks she would like to join them. Again, a really nicely done combination of a historical fiction tale with things that were going on in Great Britain at the time. Again, the move from kind of the more traditional, magical, Celtic gods and goddesses type world to Christianity. Some discussion about how these particular houses, the monastic houses, were formed. The last 4 pages, I think, the character of the abbess is based on a true person that they have historical records of. She was kind of the first abbess in Great Britain, and talks about how she was able to establish this religious house and her standing in the community and how important this religious house was to the community. The young woman, her story is the fiction part of it, and obviously they don't know everything about this abbess, but they knew who she was and who her family was, and lots more details about the religious order. So the young woman is the extra bit. And so there's this mystery that they're trying to solve, although I wouldn't particularly call this a historical mystery. It's really more historical fiction that happens to have this component in it that's driving the story, that's sort of the unknown that they're trying to figure out. This was just a sweet, quiet little book. It really was lovely. It was nicely written. I liked the characters. I felt engaged with it. If you like that historical fiction type thing, you'll probably like this book. You know, nothing earth-shattering about it, but definitely a nice read if you like that genre. So I would recommend that as well. Sorry, this podcast has gone on a little bit longer than I usually go at 42 minutes. Let me talk quickly about the book I'm reading right now because I don't have a ton to say about it. It's called Transatlantic by Colum McCann. I'm reading this for a book that has an odd structure to it. It's written not like a lot of books are written. It follows 3 main character stories that bounce back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean, America to Great Britain, but mostly Ireland. How those 3 stories intertwine, but they're kind of, I've just started it, so I'm just at the way that the author has structured this is each section is following one set of characters. So the first section starts with, just after World War I, 2 pilots. The next section talks about Frederick Douglass, the ex-slave and abolitionist who's lecturing in Ireland during the time of the very beginning of the Great Famine. The last section is on a U.S. senator who is going to Ireland after the worst of the Troubles to sit on a government panel as an advisor. So 3 different time periods, mid-19th century, very early 20th century, late 20th century. And those 3 characters are kind of the impetus for the 3 stories that will continue through the book and be intertwined. No clue how this will all turn out because like I said, I'm just finishing the first of the third information, if that makes any sense. As always, I will put links down below. You guys can check any of these out. If you have any questions about the books, about anything to do with the world of yarn, Stitches West, and so on and so forth, please feel free to get in touch. I'm always glad to try to answer questions, get back with you, point you in the right direction, whatever. I think that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining me. I always appreciate being able to spend a little bit of time with you. Before I go, let me look at my calendar really quickly here and make sure I can give you... Okay, yeah, so the next time I'm going to record will be the weekend just before I go to Stitches West. So that'll be like the 18th or 19th, something like that, of February. So I will talk to you guys then. I hope you have a great couple of weeks. Get some crafting time in, some reading time if you're so inclined. And I will talk to you all then. Take care. Bye.